Hello.
Hi.
I had a teacher I was studying with, and after studying a real juicy sutra, we meditated, and I had this heart opening that felt like a fire hydrant of love coming out of me. And this is not me.
At least entertain the possibility that maybe it is, to some extent.
It was heretofore unknown.
Yes, there you go. There you go. I can go with that. Okay.
And I'm wondering, is this part of my false self, or is this a grace that she facilitated for me?
What I'm kind of going into the sense of where your question's coming from and what you're looking at is, no, I wouldn't worry about this being false self thing. Okay. It was exactly what you said it was a spontaneous, deep opening of the heart, right?
Yep.
And when that happens, you know there's something very, very significant about it.
Yeah.
Right? It has a signature of something that's very real and important about it. Yeah.
Yeah. So at times you'll get things that I call them grace because I don't know what else they are.
Yeah, great word.
That just kind of point you, because it's like, I'd love to be loving and light, and that was never my goal before that, It's like, it was all intellectual stuff.
Yeah.
But that changed.
I'm sure it did. Yeah, a little moment like that can change the whole orientation of a life. And you start to realize, I guess I do have that inside of me. I guess it is there. And gee, it seems to be, like I said, it can reorient a life, And I would say just continue to just acknowledge all the small ways that shows up.
Yeah.
Because it's easy to go, well, it hasn't been as big and overwhelming as when it first came. Mm-hmm. And it's like the first good kiss. I used to say the first kiss until half the audience went, oh. So now I say the first good kiss. The first really, really great kiss. It's not that you're, meant to forever go back and try to re-experience the first kiss. But it does open up something inside of you. And I would just really, without grasping at it, but really just like pay attention, put some awareness on the little movements of the heart, the little movement of that opens something.
Yeah.
And just...
Yeah, because now when I'm reading, good books like the Recognition Sutras and when I get to the feeling of feeling tearful, I feel like I'm approaching the unknown.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's signatures of deep authenticity, and you do feel them.
Yeah.
You intuitively start to get the sense of, I'm in the midst of something important and real. You can just feel it. Now you know what it feels like to get in that orientation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks.
You're welcome. Nice to chat with you. Thank you. Yes.
I've got notes.
You got notes, okay.
Hi. Thank you for coming out and being of service. You made a comment.
Come a little closer.
You made a comment. I'm not even sure I got it. I paraphrased it. But the goal of meditation is to remove the distance between the psychological self and the subjective self. Mm-hmm. The subjective self almost being the awareness or the unknown part. Now, the psychological, if I have it correctly understood, would be the constructed self or the false self, which all of our traumas and our triggers are, so our reactions are. So if somebody comes in my life, and regardless of whether their intent is harmful or not, from my past conditioning because I was treated a certain way, I react.
Yes.
That's the false self. That's the psychological distance you're talking about?
Well, it's not quite that simple, because you could have that experience without constructing a self. You know, like say an animal that can be treated horribly.
That happened in the moment. That's yeah.
Right, they can see that.
But it's
that
not
owner-
happening in the current
Right,
moment.
right. But
and
they can
that's
see the
difference.
person who caused that in the current moment, or something that might remind them of that, and they'll get terrified. They don't really have a whole self going on. It's almost like their body, right, somatically goes, oh, you know, and then it starts where it becomes sort of self-reinforcing is when what your body goes through, right, then gets into your mind, and your mind starts to talk to itself about that, right? And then you've got another layer of experience on top of the original, like just spontaneous.
So I guess what my question is how do you define that psychological self versus
Yeah.
the subjective? You know what I mean? So
I do
it's all
know,
the
I do.
conditioning. It's basically like all you were talking about the past lives,
Yeah.
right? That's
Yeah.
the psychological selves, each
Mm-hmm.
constructed self. Is that what you're?
Yeah, you could look at it. You could look at it that way. Anything you can possibly think about yourself,
Is
if you can
constructed.
think it,
It's false?
yeah. Now, remember, though, when I say false, please understand this in a really accurate way. I'm not condemning it.
Yeah,
Right?
it's
False
like
doesn't
ego.
seem...
You need it to survive in this
Maybe.
Well,
Maybe.
yeah, theory-wise, right?
Yeah,
right,
yeah.
right.
We go through that developmental process where it gives us individuation, or at least the opportunity
Makes
for it.
sense of the smell or the experience we're
Yeah,
having,
right. Gives
Right.
order to the world.
It's misguided a lot due
Yes.
to our conditioning.
That's right.
Okay,
That's right.
okay,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
Thank you.
Right. Yes, and then I'll come back to you. I saw your hand too. I'll come back to you next. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for being here. I think my question kind of touches on some that have already been brought up. It goes right to that finding the 100% subjective self. And you recently posted something online that also touches on this. I mean, how far do you go with that to the point where other people's objective realities are clashing with your subjective self, and you want to avoid the padded room, if not for yourself, then for the people who care about you? When I guess it comes back to trust too, but you also had a teacher who allowed you to, or gave you approval, permission, something to that effect, to teach. And so where does that subjective and objective relationship lie along those areas, I guess?
All of them?
Well, let's go back at two. 100% subjective, not just not causing harm intentionally, but being aware of not interacting with other people's limited selves or objective selves in a way that scares them or intimidates them.
Yes. You
And-
run into some of that.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So let's just start with that. Right. So with that, first of all, I think what's really important to acknowledge is that even when we have some of these really fundamental insights that can sort of permanently change the way we see and experience self, life in general, whatever, that's not everything, right? It's not, there's still whole magnitudes of issues that are just part of being a human being that are not made completely obvious just because we've had an awakening experience. Like this would be a great example in the certain sense of, yeah, you may not know how exactly to talk and what to say, and to say it in a way that doesn't scare half the people you know, or make them think you're crazy, or, whatever it is. Like, okay, well, how do I, if and when my perspective changes so that I'm seeing and experiencing life in a rather unconventional way, right? How do I relate to a very conventional worldview? And that doesn't necessarily come with the package, right? You don't go, oh, geez, there's no separate self. And then with that package, it goes, well, here's how you manifest it, here's how you embodiment in all areas of life, at work, at home, and when your relationships and your kids, and it doesn't necessarily just come as a whole package, So there are all these issues, and And certainly one of the most important issues that we have, because we do communicate, we do relate, you know. And I really can't tell you, here's how to do it, as much as you kind of live with the curiosity. Yeah. Like, what would like, well, to put it in a Buddhist version, we don't have to, but if you did, what would right speech look like? If right speech wasn't another conventionally imposed set of moral standards that I'm trying to put down upon myself, if maybe it's not that, maybe it's something else.
Sure, you've also noted sometimes you're gentle with people and sometimes harsh, and that's not the best word, I don't mean to put words in your mouth, but come at things different ways sometimes, and I think that's appropriate to the moment as opposed to having some notion of what right speech is, because sometimes you see a kid playing in the street and you say, come here, come on, get out of the street, and they aren't doing it. Well, you know, maybe you start yelling at them or cussing, you know, I don't know, maybe that's appropriate in the moment. I'm not going to cuss now, but
yeah.
You know, it just...
Generally, I think what I would call right speech and right action is it's really unintended. It just happens. And then you look back on it and you go, wow, I'll be darned. There just seemed to be some extraordinary alignment with that moment. And I knew what to say, and I knew how to say it, and I knew the gesture, but I didn't know it a second before it happened. So I think all these things about like right speech and right action, they're not about imposing an idea. They're actually about, for lack of a better way of describing it, being in an experience of being, a totally aligned experience of being. So that's really what we find in all these different areas of life, is coming into a deeply aligned experience where a spontaneous way of a being seems to really fit the situation. And I'm sure you've had those moments.
Yeah.
Probably almost everybody.
And then I go grasping at them, you know, like it tends to happen, and then I let go of that, and then they happen again.
That's right. That's part of that's the trajectory. For, you know, it doesn't necessarily have to stay that way, but that's super common for a while, because another part of you is, just like you had to learn to operate in a lot of conditioned, conventional viewpoints, and you had to learn and conform to that, when things start to shift about the way you see yourself, others, life, there's a part of you that's orienting itself around that. Yeah. And that new orientation of all those bits reorienting, that's not something that happens like a flash. Right? Insight can happen like a flash. The reorientation is like everything in you is like, whoa, wait a minute. Right down to your energetics and how you move in the world and everything else. Yeah.
I could go on for hours, but thank you very much.
Thanks for bringing it up. Yeah. Okay, come on up.